Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and Conversation, Saturday, August 10, 2024. Happy that all of you are making time for us this morning. It's nice to see so many people getting up and out and at it early. We'll get this out of the way so you can go door knocking later this morning. Pleased to talk about voter protection, voter issues. We have Elizabeth Boyles, who is the DFL Voter Protection. Well, you'll tell us exactly what you are. And my goal this morning is to talk about the voting system and the issues that come up in voting. And then at the end of it all, giving you places to go to volunteer your time, because protecting the vote, as you well know from 2020, is kind of an important issue. So, Elizabeth, tell us about you. Tell us about DFL Voter Protection, where you fit in the scheme of things, and a little bit about what you see on the horizon. But we'll get into details, of course, so you don't have to take the whole hour and talk about it, but you can if you want. Anyway, talk to us.
I won't give you my autobiography. Thanks, Ron. Hi, everybody. As Ron said, my name is Elizabeth Boyles. I am the Voter Protection Director with the Coordinated Campaign. What does that mean? So as you know, anybody here who's familiar with the Coordinated Campaign knows that we've got some different programs that we run. Obviously, our field organizing program is the biggest. We've also got a coalitions program. We've got our data team. And just like those, the voter protection team is one of those programs / departments. I've got a staff of 3 right now, soon to be 5, hoping that some of this wonderful Harris Walls money will kick in for maybe 1 or 2 more people after that. And we work both on coordinating 3 volunteer programs that are kind of like our bread and butter. We run the voter protection hotline, and we have a program called Local Liaisons, which I can talk about later. And our biggest thing is training poll challengers to be sent out to precincts across the state on election day. A little bit about me. I grew up in St. Paul, did not stray far for school. I went to St. Kate's and graduated from, I like to say William Mitchell because it became Mitchell Hamlin my last semester of law school. But I actually took a semester off of undergrad to work for the DFL as a field organizer back in 2010, and have kind of gone around and around in circles ever since. I did a little bit of voter protection work in 2018, a little bit more in 2022, and I am back this time, as Ken Martin would say, for my 3rd tour of duty running the program this year. So, Ron, where would you like me to start?
Well, I'm just curious in terms of where you fit in the kind of the organizational chart. When I think of coordinated campaign, at the top of it, I think of Elise Mae Quaid, and when I think of the boiler room and all the legal stuff, I think of Charlie Nowen.
Yep.
Where do you fit with either of those guys?
So Elise Mae Quaid is the coordinated campaign director, and under that are 4 senior staff positions, and I am one of those senior staff members.
Okay.
We've got our data director, our operations director, and our general elections director, and then myself.
Okay.
So my job is to do everything else that leads up to election day. So as Ron mentioned, on election day, we have what we call the legal boiler room, which is where all of the issues coming in from the hotline that campaign staff are seeing across the state and that poll challengers are reporting get filtered up to the boiler room. And we've usually got 2 or 3 attorneys assigned to different regions across the state to essentially put out fires on election day and make sure that everybody who shows up to vote is able to.
Okay. So. And Elizabeth, just so you know, we have a few of our electeds on with us. This is mostly Senate District 52 DFL, but we've got a couple of wonderful folks from a different district, Chuck and Elise Smith Dewey, and I never remember what number you guys have these days in terms of your Senate district. Our electeds are State Senator Jim Carlson, he's here, and State Rep Bianca Vernig, she's here. Sometimes we get city council folks, sometimes Representative Liz Ryer joins us. Also have a friend of mine, Jim Watts, who is from Plymouth. And so we got a CD5er on with us. And I note that Ashlyn Bauer just joined, and she is from the coordinated campaign. So Ashlyn, good morning, welcome, glad you could make it. Love to have you chime in on what the coordinated campaign is doing and where you're needing people. As I mentioned before you joined, I'm hoping that at the end of all of this, everybody is ready to sign up and do stuff. So, Elizabeth, back to you. Overarching view in the context of election fights around the country, what do you see as the hot button issues in Minnesota? What are we worried about?
It's a good question. What are we worried about? Unfortunately, a lot of the same things that we were worried about in 2020. I know you mentioned kind of before we got going here, Midwest Swamp Watch starting to make its presence known again. I mean, it is kind of the same old story with election integrity work. That's the Republicans' version of election protection. Hand counting has become the hot button issue this year. Wanting, folks, there's a group in Anoka that's made the news a couple of times in the last couple of months, trying to persuade their county election staff and election judges to hand count votes on election night, which is a big no-no in Minnesota. The law says that once you start using electronic ballot tabulator machines, which I think just about everywhere in the state does now, certainly in Anoka County, you cannot go back to hand counting. So unfortunately, we're anticipating that might present a little bit of a problem. We hope it doesn't get as far as the courts or anything. We just heard too, I mean, we don't know how accurate it is, but now the RNC is saying they seem to have just realized that we had a slew of wonderful election law changes in 2023, and they think now is the right time to
a weed killer
get those
or
to
something.
court.
I just saw the long guy wandering about.
Hey, Sherry.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. You have your mic on. You might want to turn your mic off.
I'm sorry.
I'm enjoying hearing about your weed killer, but that's for another time. So Elizabeth, what we were talking about just before we started, actually with Senator Carlson, Jim, you were talking about the hand counting issue and some of the things that you're seeing. Why don't you pick up that thread and tell us, start over if you would, for those who didn't hear it, and tell us what that issue is about.
Well, actually, it's Elizabeth touched on it there, that you cannot go back to hand counting once you've gone to machine counting. Plus, also in the reviews, there is a procedure in reviewing your results where you hand count a randomly selected precinct, and you verify that it is accurate, it does match the machines. And then if it does not match, then there's a procedure where you go to more referrals or more precincts. But what they want to do is they want to have all precincts hand counted and skip the machine counting, because they're insisting that the machines are doing voter changes. And this is typical. It's gone on for quite some time. They started out with this Minnesota Swamp Watch, and they have a lot of rhetoric that they say is applying to Minnesota voting. One of the things that I just heard about a couple of days ago is a new criticism of, and I'm trying to remember exactly how they put it, but what they're interested in is just making some kind of throwing sand in the gears. That's all it is. And what my committee is doing is we are advising, asking the members of the Dems to contact their city council members and ask them about it if they have been presented it, and giving them a little background. The Secretary of State is also going through the elections people and contacting both counties and the municipalities that do their own counting to tell them that this is coming, and these people really don't know what they're talking about. So now
Are there sufficient people in all of the districts, and this is both for you, Jim and Elizabeth, to make sure that the vote counts happen the way they're supposed to? I'm worried about a shortage of people to manage all of this stuff.
at this point, I don't think there's a shortage. It is
Okay.
something. Yeah. And Elizabeth might be able to, I think she's probably more recently informed on it. I haven't looked at this for a couple of days, other than I've talked to I don't see him on right now, Mike Sapina. And I also talked to our city manager, and it was presented at the open part of the meeting, but it wasn't recorded. So I haven't seen a recorded version of their presentation yet. But our city manager, Diane Miller, polled the council members and said, are you interested in carrying this further? Are you interested in hearing a presentation from these folks? And the answer from all of the council members on the record, it was no.
And that's a good thing.
Yep, that is a good thing. And there are two cities that I'm aware of right now, Oak Park, I think it is, and the city of Ramsey, that have passed these resolutions.
Have passed the resolutions to require hand counting of everything.
Resolution for the county to allow them to hand count.
Okay.
But now
Elizabeth,
that is in conflict with the law.
Elizabeth, what's Voter Protection's position in response to that, if any, yet?
Our response is the law makes it very clear what is and what isn't allowed, and that is not allowed.
Okay. Are you taking any action?
At this point, there really isn't anything actionable aside from doing outreach, in the same way that the Secretary of State's office is doing. I have not heard from any local election administrator that they are particularly concerned about this. That's actually part of our local liaison program. Is we've got some long-term volunteers who are assigned kind of a county, and they build a relationship and a rapport with the local election administrator there. It's typically the county auditor. And so that's how we hear about things. And that's also a good way for us to communicate back through kind of a trusted, known source across the state. I just wanted to touch on Senator Carlson mentioned the election review that takes place after Election Day. It's called the post-election review, and I believe there are 4 phases. And this is something that I asked the State's office about a while ago, because this big push for hand counting, and that is part of the post-election review. And there are, depending on how large the election administrative district is, there's a minimum number of precincts that need to be randomly pulled and hand counted to check the electronic equipment. But I was told that those are minimums, and that counties and the municipalities that run their own elections are free to do as many hand reviews as they like. And I went, oh, that could gum up the works, because there's actually quite a short period of time. I think all of the post-election review needs to be done within like 12 days or something like that after Election Day. And I mean, boy, if you've got 500 precincts, that's a lot of hand counting. But I was assured that the timeline is the timeline, and whatever they can do in that timeline is fine, but there are no extensions and no exceptions for that. So that's
Jim, do you have
kind
any
of
thoughts on Jim? Do you have any thoughts on that one? You're still muted.
I have a letter that I need to review right now that came from the Secretary of State's office, but at this point, I'm not sure what the Secretary of State has done, but he is going through his channels to the municipalities and the counties that do the counting to make sure that they follow the law. And that's the big thing, is follow the law. The law is very clear.
Is that 12-day period a Minnesota thing, or is that a national thing?
I believe that's Minnesota. That's
Okay.
in our
All right.
process.
My recollection of my experience, and Elizabeth, this goes back to you, and it's kind of an in the weeds question, and then I want to bring it back up to 30,000 feet. I've been a poll challenger on a number of occasions. Happily, I guess, I've sat and twiddled my thumbs all day long every time, meaning there's nothing that's happened. But at the end of the day, when the polls close at 8 o'clock, at that point, the chief election judge starts pulling the data off the machine, and then it gets transmitted to somewhere, maybe the county, the city. I don't know where it goes. How verified are those votes and that vote tally? And I think about the way votes come in. Some votes are cast that day, and you walk in and your ballot goes into the machine and you can watch it go. Other votes come in by mail. Other votes are actually early votes, and they're technically not by mail. They're actual early votes. Some votes come in through drop boxes, and some of those ballots can have issues with them. I remember somewhere that undated votes are problematic, and there's been some litigation about that. I don't think that's here. My question really has to do with what's the process for counting those votes, and what do poll challengers do, if anything, in observing that process?
Good questions. So on election day, the only votes that get counted at a precinct are the ones that have been cast that day for that precinct. And so, yep. So once polls close at 8 p.m. And everybody who was in line has voted and left, voting locations actually become open to the public. So it's a public process at that point. And what the election judges do is they compare the number of people who showed up that day according to the voter roll, the roster, with the number of ballots that the machine physically processed. Right. They make sure that the vote totals also match that physical count of how many ballots were processed. And then at the county level is where all those absentee ballots get processed. So we've got 46 days of early voting. And the majority of that is true absentee ballot. That's, you can either request it by mail or you go in person and they give you a request for an absentee ballot form, and then you swap that for your absentee ballot. 18 days before the election is when that direct balloting period starts, where you go show up, at your county elections office, and they hand you a ballot like you would get on election day. And so at the end of the night, all of those results get filtered up to the county elections office, because that is where the canvassing boards start, is at the county level. Poll challengers don't have any official role in doing any of that work, but we do ask that our poll challengers stay at their assigned location until the results are posted. It's a legal requirement that once a precinct has done all of that post election day processing and they've got all their numbers, that they must physically, on a piece of paper, tape it to a wall, tape it to a door, post the results for that precinct. And so we ask that they stay so that they can report those results back to us.
And that can go on well into the evening, well past 8 o'clock.
Yes, unfortunately, for some people, it's a longer day than others. We want our poll challengers there from about 6:30 in the morning until those results are posted. Yeah, it's a long day. And as you said, what we tell people is we train you as best we can, but our hope for you is that you have a boring day, because that means everything is running the way that it should.
But my concern, having been a head judge in Egan and I live in 55 now, and I'm a head or a judge in Burnsville, people aren't aware of the process. They don't know that every single ballot is initialed by a person of opposite political parties to make sure that it's blank, that every machine is verified that the number is the same at the beginning, at the end, so that nobody's tampered with the machine. We also have to verify that everybody who has registered and received a ballot, that those numbers match the number of ballots that we have. So we count the number of ballots in order to verify the number with the machine. So there are all of these safeguards in place. And I just think that anybody who has ever been a head judge has to kind of shake their head and say, all these people who are questioning these things don't understand the process, because the process has all of these safeguards. We have, when we list the numbers and we send them to the county, we have a sheet that has, I think, 6 or 8 people who have to initial it from opposite parties to verify that the numbers are exactly what they are. And that people even who come into the precinct who have an absentee ballot, they can't cast it that day. They either have to give it up and we put it in as a spoiled ballot and give them a new ballot. So the numbers of ballots actually have to match both the spoiled ballots and the number of ballots that have been cast. So there are all
Well-
kinds of safeguards that are required in order to submit the information to the county.
Well, Rob, let me ask you in your role as a chief election judge, have you ever seen any poll challengers do an effective challenge of any kind at any point in the process? And that would be either Republican or Democrat. Have you ever seen anything like that? Is the poll challenging process a valuable tool from what you've seen? And Elizabeth, you'll get to answer that same question because I know you want to get poll challengers. But Rob, what have you seen?
Well, the last time in Burnsville, when I was a judge, we had a poll challenger who sat there from the Democratic Party the whole day and didn't have anything to do for the most part, because he was observing the fact that we were following all of the procedures. There is a provision now so that a challenger can actually challenge somebody's eligibility to vote. And it's supposed to be based on personal knowledge.
Personal knowledge.
Yeah, and that can get a little bit crazy because we don't know as a judge what knowledge that person has of the person trying to cast a ballot. But from my experience, the number of people who have been actually challenged is minimal, and there are opportunities for people to vouch for other people if they don't have the right ID in order to verify that they live in that district. But anyhow, I'm just saying that there are lots and lots of safeguards built into the system, and I'm assuming that what we do in Burnsville and Egan is the same as done throughout the state. And I just think most people are not aware of the double checks on everything, even the ballots, that if the machine breaks down, we have to put the ballots in a special folder, and then they're counted after the machine comes back online. But whenever those things happen, it's always verified by people of opposite parties, Democrat and Republican. Our biggest problem right now, as I understand in Burnsville, is we have an overabundance of Democratic people who are going to be serving as judges, but we don't have as many Republicans. And so that can be an issue because evidently.
Yeah, let
Go
me turn
ahead.
it back. Let me turn it back to Elizabeth. One of the roles that you would like to fill with volunteers is poll challengers. Let's talk to us about what those duties are, how valuable people are to fill those duties, and frankly, where around the state do you need them? Because as Rob expressed, in Dakota County, haven't had much problem. As I mentioned to you somewhere along the line, I've been a poll challenger a number of times, and enjoyed eating my sandwich and reading my book. Really not much to do. And in fact, bless them, the election judges, when I introduce myself, they say, there's your chair, don't move. So where do you need people realistically?
I'll answer these questions, but I do want to touch on election judges as well.
Please.
So we're actually going through the process right now, in collaboration with campaigns across the state and the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, which is the entity that owns nationwide voter protection, of coming up with our list of priority precincts across the state. As you can imagine, we look at a lot of historical data to see where there have been issues in the past. We look, at how dense, what's the turnout number for different precincts. So, what kind of traffic do we expect? Unfortunately, we do have to look at things like, population demographics. Is this a place where there's a, large percentage of non-native English speakers? Is this a college campus, in this precinct where there might be some confusion about the residential student list that the school provides, and then needing to bring just your college ID? I feel like there are always one or two places where there's some maybe willful ignorance on the part of some people who want to ask students to provide more. And so, again, as you can imagine, just the fact that the bulk of Minnesotans live in the Twin Cities greater metro area, that's where we need most folks to be. But we do look, obviously, we also are going to be looking for people in Duluth, Rochester, St. Cloud, Mankato, Bemidji, Moorhead, kind of across the state. And then like I said, in areas that have had issues before. And then college towns also are pretty high up on our list. In terms of the value of a poll challenger, it is invaluable, because if something happens, a poll challenger is the only way that we are going to know about it. Most people, exactly, they have a very boring day. They sit there, they eat their snacks, they read their book, do the crossword. But poll challengers are our eyes and ears across the state on election day. Like I said, there are only going to be 5 or 6 people on my team. In the legal boiler room, there's probably going to be between 15 and 20 attorneys. Minnesota has nearly 3,000 in-person polling places on election day. We can't begin to cover that on our own. And so the more poll challengers that we have, the better read of how things are going on election day we will get, and the more issues that come up, we will be able to address in real time.
Well, it's not like the only thing a poll challenger does is watch registration and the distribution of ballots. For example, you take a break and you want to go outside and get some air, whether that's your intent or not. Your purpose is to go outside and see where the signs are posted and see whether they're posted too close to the door, and if there's electioneering going on, and if there are people who are handing out materials or wearing T-shirts, doing things like that. The one episode I did have some years ago was a Republican poll challenger showed up, and there were not often many of them, but he was a deputy Dakota County sheriff, and he was in uniform. And that's a no-no, if I remember correctly.
That is a big no-no.
It's a big no-no. And so I don't remember what came of that. I think I kind of confronted him and said he's got to leave, and he did. Or at least maybe that's my wishful thinking. But there are issues of that kind that poll challengers can take up, and the poll challenger's job is then to call into whoever and say, I got a problem here. So that's what you're looking for, and you will assign people as poll challengers to hot button places as opposed to a farm in rural Northfield, right?
Unless we've heard that some plan is being hatched to, say, have law enforcement posted right outside what we call the buffer zone to intimidate voters. That's exactly right. We try to send people to those areas that we unfortunately anticipate things like that happening.
Okay, so let's talk about the other two positions that you have mentioned along the way, the hotline and the liaison position. Tell us more detail about those. What are you looking for? What do those folks do?
Sure. So our local liaison program, like I mentioned briefly before, is a long-term but not a super time-consuming volunteer role that we have. This is actually something that came down from National Voter Protection a few cycles ago. Um, Essentially, understanding that voter protection teams tend not to be that big, um, and it's a program that lets us build up volunteers who then go and have these ongoing, months-long relationships with the local election administrator where they live, and just facilitate open communication, learn about some potential problems or anything that the county anticipates it might struggle with ahead of time, so that we can help be supportive and help solve problems before people cast votes and certainly before election day. So we have a survey that we send out to all of the election administrators in the state. It's voluntary. We have 87 counties in Minnesota and another 30-ish municipalities that run their own elections. I say we're lucky if we get 50% of them back, but it gives us a good baseline of how the county is feeling about their elections process. And it's a starting point for our liaisons to have a conversation with the county auditor or the city elections clerk. And we have people, fill out a report every couple of weeks, just how are things going, and then we check in with them after that, just to talk about any issues that have come up, and let folks know if we are seeing things statewide that they may not be seeing. So that's our local liaison role. The hotline is pretty
Okay,
straightforward.
before you go to the hotline, let me talk about the liaison for a second. I'm not sure if I actually occupied that role or not, but I did get to know the Dakota County, whoever was in charge of elections. His first name was Andy, I forget his last name, and he left that position after the last election. You're shaking your head like you might be familiar with this. I got through the rumor mill, it was suggested that he felt like he was threatened and left because he didn't like that part of the process anymore. We became reasonably friendly, but he made it quite clear that this was his job and I was not to interfere with his job. I went to a couple of things. One was I was sitting in a room watching Dakota County people count votes, and I don't know if that was I don't remember when that was. And the other thing I went to was a meeting, and I think this was the meeting to certify the vote totals within that 12-day or after that 12-day period. And that's an open to the public meeting, albeit all the counts were done behind closed doors and then just it was pro forma certification. Are those roles that the liaison undertakes, and that's what you're looking for?
Yes. So because the liaisons are long-term volunteers, we ask them to do a little bit more observation of different things that go on outside of, either early voting or on election day. So we do ask them to attend, hopefully virtually, city council meetings or county board meetings if there's anything election related on the agenda. Public accuracy tests are one of the things that election administrators do before election day, but fairly close to election day, to verify that all of the ballot machines are calibrated correctly. So that's kind of like our first check, is to make sure that the machines are in good working order. Those are open to the public. We ask our liaisons to attend their local public accuracy test. And then,
I
yes,
did that too.
yeah. And then the county canvassing board. So that's that first level of vote certification that takes place after the post-election review. We ask our liaisons to attend that too, to see what they can see and just let us know if there are any issues. And then from there, of course, the county goes up to the state canvassing board. And that's honestly something that I will probably be at, because it's in one place, not 87.
The issue in Georgia that came up within the last week or so about the election, I don't know if it was the state certification, or I think it was a county by county certification question. What was that issue, and is that something we face here?
You know, I don't actually know specifically what that issue was, only because we've been so focused on our own primary here. That is something, getting her last name is the Georgia Voter Protection Director, and I can check in with her and learn more about that issue. I don't know if maybe Ron, if you know a little bit more.
I'm drawing a blank on the details. Sadly, I did follow it for a bit. I know that there was an effort by the Georgia board to give them the power to certify or not certify. And my impression is that A, that's illegal and Mark Elias's group is going to challenge it. And B, that the certification process is a ministerial act, not a discretionary act. And therefore it is mandatory, and courts can issue injunctions to require that certification can happen. And here I am, one lawyer talking to another lawyer about mandatory and discretionary and ministerial and all the rest of that stuff. Is there, what's the law as you understand it on certification in Minnesota? And do you perceive any issues like that?
My understanding of the law is that it is exactly the same. Is that it is not exactly pro forma, but it is a process that is prescribed by law, and that it's a formal accounting process, essentially, because we're in that post-election review phase, and that would be the time to identify any issues and potentially gum up the works. Once it gets to the county canvassing board step, that really is just looking at all of the results from the individual precincts, making sure that the post-election review process was done properly, and that there were no issues, and certifying those results, and passing them on to the state canvassing board. There's not a lot of gray area there. And I just checked with my best friend Google, that is exactly what the issue in Georgia is. I believe it was in Fulton County, which is
Atlanta.
Of course, where else would it be? That there were members of canvassing boards that were refusing to vote to certify, so they weren't even engaging in that process. I am not familiar with Georgia's state constitution or any of their laws, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Mark Elias's group is going to win that one.
Yeah, I suspect. And Simon Barnacle from the Elias group was going to join us this morning, but got waylaid. And so sad we don't have them to chime in. So here's where I want to go. We've been really in the weeds with some of this stuff, and I, for one, find it fascinating. I hope everybody else in the call does. But finish off by telling us about the hotline. And then I'd like you to tell us about how people can get involved, either liaison, challenger, hotline, or election judge. And in that context, I'd like to wake Ashlyn Bauer up and get her involved in the conversation and talk about what the coordinated campaign is looking for in the way of volunteers. So here we go, folks. We're gonna have volunteer city for the next 10-15 minutes. Get your pens and papers out so you know where you can go volunteer for things. So Elizabeth, tell us about hotline, and then segue into how to sign up.
Yeah, so hotline is our third volunteer program. We run a statewide voter protection hotline. Anybody can call it. We don't ask for party affiliation, anything like that. And the purpose of the hotline is simply to provide complete, accurate information about elections and voting. We get calls. Most of our calls, to be honest, are where do I vote on election day? And then we have our hotline volunteers with we've got your laptop, your tablet out, take the voter's address, pop it into the Secretary of State's poll finder tool, and away you go. But we do also get questions about, this is my situation, how do I register to vote? We do get the public also reporting issues that they're seeing in. And so again, all of this comes with training and support from staff. But we really need coverage the closer we get to election day, the more calls we get. And on election day, it's I wouldn't say it's a party, but typically what happens on election day is we will get a ton of people who just want to come hang out with us all day. And it's pretty fun to see people as soon as the hotline rings, who can answer it first is usually what happens. Like I said, staff are always there to support. We give you a big manual that tries to anticipate any questions that you could get. But we are always there on standby, ready to help. And yeah, you can do it remotely, which is nice. It's one of the things that you can do from home or wherever you choose to. If you're on a beach, I'm jealous. So that's the hotline program.
But you can do it remotely, or you can come to what, DFL headquarters?
You can come to DFL headquarters. Honestly, you could go to any DFL field office. We've got 15 across the state, I think. I will let Ashlyn talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
To get involved in all of this, you can, yes, volunteer early so that you can understand the platform. You can go to dfl.org/voter protection, where you can learn a little bit more about our program, sign up to either participate in the program, get some more information. The entire coordinated campaign and the Harris campaign here in Minnesota uses Mobilize. I don't know how many people are familiar with that. It's kind of like a jobs board, but for campaigns and volunteering opportunities. It's mobilize.us. And I can drop that in the chat really quickly before we all leave here. And that will show you everything that's going on in the state, in all of, from all the different field offices and all the different congressional districts. We have our own events up there. You can sign up just to volunteer when we've paused our trainings now because we don't have time to train people and get them plugged in for the primary on Tuesday. We will resume our trainings in September. We've also got some fun stuff coming up for the DNC convention week, building up to Thursday night's keynote speech by Vice President, hopefully soon to be President-elect Kamala Harris. And so that's the best way to get involved with our team. I will put the Mobilize stuff in the chat. I will also give you our email and our office line. Please, get in touch anytime if you just want to chat, you want to learn a little bit more, or if you say sign me up, I'm ready. We would love that too.
Hey, Judy Carpenter, I saw your comment in the chat about your enthusiasm. Tell us a little bit about that and encourage people to sign up, because you seem to be so enthusiastic about it. Judy, you there? There you go.
I'm here. I'll just go with the mic. Yeah, I did that for about 5 weeks. And because it takes that time to get familiar with the platform and how it works. And on the last day, they only wanted experienced people, so I had an 8-hour shift. But at one point, I did have some people in Duluth who were being prevented from voting by people who would not let them enter the voting area. They were off by the stairway to block the stairway leading up to the polling place. And the boiler room was the place to go. And they took care of it. And what was really exciting is they gave me a follow-up report. So I got to know that it ended successfully. Otherwise, you just send your report and your notification, you fill out a form, send it to the boiler room, and they take care of it. So then you don't know how it went, because you communicated with this person who was desperate. He was upset because he was being bullied and he was not going to get to vote that day. And so then it was nice that I got that notification later on that he had been allowed to vote.
So you felt really good about being involved in that process, and you're going to do it again?
I am, and every day you have to be updated to where the drop boxes are, where the polling places are. You really have to study up when you log in to read your update. So you want to log in about a half an hour before to study so that you're well informed.
Cool. All right. Well, Ashlyn, you've been wonderful to hang tight with us for 45 minutes. Tell us a little bit about the coordinated campaign, what it is, where it is, where's the West St. Paul office, what you do there, and what your needs are.
Yeah, hi. My name is Ashlyn Bauer. Our internet's a little unstable here, so I switched to my phone, so hopefully everybody can hear and see me. But yeah, so our office, at least mine, is located at 1547 Livingston Ave in West St. Paul. That's like a block or so down from the Bingo Palace on Roberts, if that helps. Yeah, so some of the things we have going on here coming up is since the DNC is happening, not next week, but the week after, we are doing a lot of events next week to lead into that. We're doing a potluck next Wednesday here at our office. That's gonna be at 5:30 if anybody wants to come. I can drop some links in the chat once I'm done talking, but yeah, we're doing that. We do phone banking every single Thursday. We had a huge group this last week. We had about 16 people come to do phone banking and postcard writing. So that was a great turnout, and we love for that to keep happening. So please come, bring friends. If you are an experienced phone banker, you really just have to do our little training with us like once, and so that way you know the new script and you can take the lists and yeah, just get cracking on that. But yeah, we do that every Thursday night at I want to say it's 5:30 to 7:30, just like our potluck is, but I will send links so everybody has that info. And then every single weekend we do door knocking out of all of our offices. My office, our times are 10 a.m. Saturday morning, so I actually have some people that should be coming in here soon. And then we also do noon to 3 on Sundays. But next weekend we'll be doing a huge weekend of action. We're going to be having 2 door knocking sessions each day at noon to 3 and 3 to 6. So that's to lead into the DNC week, where we really want to make sure people know that that's coming up, that they should watch some of those amazing speeches that are going to be happening. And yeah, just catch the train of hype that Walz being picked for the VP has brought to the state. Everybody is so excited, and we just love to have that. But yeah, as for needs, our office actually needs a projector or a TV so that we can have some debate watch parties, maybe watch parties of those DNC speeches. If anybody can get that to us quickly, that'd be great. I am also reaching out to the other SDs and stuff. But yeah, that's one of the only main big things that the office needs. We've got a fridge, we got donated by Mary Clardy herself, so that was amazing of her. We have, other than Harris Walls signs, we have a bunch of yard signs. So please come by the office, you can get info on other shifts, other things that we do here at the office. And yeah, we have like 16 other offices around the state. There is 4, I believe, in St. Paul alone. There's one on University. There's one on the east side. So whatever is closest to you guys, it probably will be mine, since your district is under my office. But if you live on the way opposite end of 52 and are closer to one of the other offices, please feel free to ask me for their address if you can't find it. But yeah, we are really excited to have this get going and get out the vote here after Labor Day. It's going to be a crazy time, but we are super excited and hope that you guys will sign up for some shifts and that we can get a lot of people out there on the doors.
So again, how is it that one signs up other than showing up at your office and saying I'm here?
I can put some mobilized links either into the chat, or I could email them to you and you can get them to the attendee list.
Can you do both, please?
Oh yeah,
I'm
I
much
will.
better with an email that has the links in them than I am picking things up out of the chat. So I would
Right.
appreciate that. We will publicize that. The other thing, and I'm not sure if Lynn, I think Lynn just left because she's got a door knock. How does the coordinated campaign work in getting volunteers when you've got two state house races in 52. You've got a congressional race in 52 and CD2, and everybody's looking for volunteers and everybody's doing door knocks. And while it's all great to have them all staffed, we also don't want to do overkill and step on each other's toes. You're the coordinated campaign. How do you coordinate?
Yeah, I talk a lot with the campaign managers of the House campaigns in my districts. I also talk a lot with the Angie team. We have one of her field organizers working out of my office as well. She's not always here, but we catch up at least once a week. And yeah, we just trying to make sure that we're not knocking the same turfs. I work a lot specifically with Mary and Bianca have been the most helpful with making sure that we're checking each other and making sure that we're not knocking in the same areas. So that has been working really great there. Yeah, we're doing our best to not like double efforts, if that makes sense. And yeah, some of it is a little bit more difficult to get volunteers because some people do want to go to just a specific candidate. But we do try to encourage the fact that we are supporting the whole ticket up and down the ballot. Especially in my districts, everyone is signed on to the coordinated. And so yeah, it's more how I'm actually from Iowa, and things were very scattered and hard to do down there. So this is much better than anything I've worked with in the past on like making sure we're doing stuff.
Yay, SD 52. We're the best Senate district in the state.
Yes.
So here's something. I mean, what SD 52 does, and you may or may not be aware of this, is that we print up our own thing that we call a sample ballot. And we'll not do that yet until Harris Wall's ticket is confirmed after the DNC. But shortly thereafter, we will print this up. And if I'm not mistaken, we do some mailing of it, but we also use it as a lip drop item. And I know that in my precinct, Egan Precinct 1, that my precinct chair and I are going to knock our precinct. And so we want to get turf cut and take out whatever literature that we can get our hands on. How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, if you'd like, we can set up like a volunteer shift with our office and I can get you the lit that you need and cut your turfs. And since you guys are experienced, you can definitely, and I believe, I'd have to talk to my new supervisor about that, but my old supervisor, we had talked before about those sample ballots before the ticket even got changed. So I'm sure that we probably will still be able to drop those. But yeah, we'll check again with higher ups. But yeah, we can get you Amy and Harris and Angie and all the lit that you need and make sure that those are packed up for you if that's what you need help with.
Okay. So Ashlyn, we've hit our hour. I have one more question for you. And then Elizabeth, I want to finish with you. Ashlyn, what have you seen in the way of enthusiasm in terms of number of volunteers, in terms of energy since the change in the ticket?
Oh yeah, it's definitely so much more enthusiasm, so much more energy. Like the day after the ticket switch happened, we had sign up after sign up on Mobilize. We had tons happening through like that entire week. And then now that Walls is the VP, like I said earlier, it's even more excitement. The phones, every phone call I had before Biden dropped out was it was sad, if not distraught. And now people are overjoyed. They are so excited. They are pumped to have their first female president. People are excited. It's amazing. It's great energy.
And you still are looking for people to sign up because you still need tons more people, right?
Oh yeah, our biggest event so far has only been that phone bank. So we are really trying to get people to door knock more now because yeah, we're trying to get them more and more to the harder and harder things.
Yeah,
The door knocking.
I hear a lot of people interested in doing postcards more so this year than ever before.
Yeah, we had tons of people doing postcards, and we're hoping that we can keep that going as long as we can, but it is an expensive form of volunteering, especially because of how much stamps cost now. Particularly, that's the money part is the stamps, and so we're gonna try to keep doing it as long as we can, but we're not sure if it's feasible to keep that going. So
Okay.
yeah, we're trying to get people to shift from postcards onto phones or door knocking. And after that, we may try to do like a letter writing thing. I know a lot of folks are interested in writing letters to college students, so we might try to do something like that. It just depends on, again, if it's feasible, if it will be worth it in the end. But yeah, so we're really trying to push people to the doors, especially because that's the best way to get people out to vote, to get the conversation to actually happen.
Okay. So Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you to take us out with closing thoughts, what you've heard this morning, how it motivates you, what things that you need help with. Judy Corrigan asks if there's a texting program. I don't know if you can answer that, Elizabeth, but in any event, take us away.
Thank you, Ron. And thank you all for being here this morning. This is the best job in the world to me. You know, I get to do campaign work, which is kind of, you know, I love the energy and the excitement, and I think Ashlyn undersold the enthusiasm and the excitement that we have been seeing in the last couple of weeks. Voter protection is usually a fairly small program. We've got kind of a core of volunteers that do it every cycle. We went from about 150 volunteer signups to over 500 in less
Wow.
than a week after the top of the ticket changed. I mean, it has been phenomenal. People are talking about this is 2008 Obama energy. And we want to do everything we can to capture that and keep it going all the way through November. Yeah, this is the best job in the world. It's campaign work. Voter protection work is grounded in civil rights work too, in making sure that, you know, people are not disenfranchised. And as Minnesotans know, after the Franken-Coleman recount, every single vote absolutely counts. So anything that we can do collectively as a team for all of our candidates to make sure that we talk to as many people as possible, that we motivate as many people as possible to get out and vote. And then through my program, make sure that they are able to and that their vote counts. That's the game. It's the game every cycle, but now more than ever, I mean, come on, it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. There is no competition at all.
Well, let's make sure that all those votes are counted and that it's all done well and that the polls work and that we all get out and knock on the doors and make sure that the people show up to vote. You know, we're not going to have a voter protection problem if people aren't showing up to vote. So I will conclude our conversation this morning. Thank you for all of you who made time to do this. I note that a number of people have dropped off because they're going out to do a door knock, and that's great. Next month, on Coffee and Conversation, we will have our Democratic National Committee delegates come to talk to us about the convention. So that will be Cindy and Lynn and Dan Thomas Cummins, who's on what's the Rules Committee or something like that. And those are just some of the folks from our local district. And in particular, thanks to those folks who joined us this morning from other districts, Jim and Elise and Chuck. And if I miss anybody, I apologize, but I'm delighted that we have some non-SD52 people this morning. So beautiful day to go out door knocking. Go be persuasive, everybody. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Ashlyn. And we will talk to you next time.